14 this morning. This is not the age of information. This is not the age of information. Forget the news and the radio and the blurred screens. This is the time of loaves and fishes. People are hungry, and one good word is bread for 1,000. That's a poem by David White called Loaves and Fishes. So as we begin this story this morning, it says that when Jesus heard this, well, what was it that Jesus had heard? He had heard that his cousin and mentor, John the Baptist, had been executed by Herod Antipas at a lavish birthday banquet for the rich and mighty. This is why Jesus needs to get away by himself and seek the comfort of his heavenly Father. But the people are also grieving because they saw John as a prophet, and so they follow Jesus. And out of compassion, Jesus heals them. Then at the prompting of his disciples, and after inviting the disciples to participate, Jesus feeds more than 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The next morning, after going out to pray alone again, Jesus walks to the disciples across the stormy waves of the sea. Peter joins him on the water, and Jesus rescues Peter when Peter's fear overwhelms his faith. I want to think about the 2 banquets, one about which we read this morning and the other that I just shared briefly with you a moment ago. Herod has a banquet where we're told there's much drinking. It's a party for the rich and powerful. A young woman is exploited. There's too much drink and too much food, and a room full of jaded and ambitious guests. On the other hand, Jesus holds a compassionate banquet for the poor and grieving. Basically, as Kelly said, a simple picnic for those who are hungry. Herod is interested in power, while Jesus is interested in caring for God's people. Herod's banquet leads to John's death. Jesus' banquet feeds 5,000 plus hungry people. Jesus, in both of the miracles that we read about this morning, both the feeding of the 5,000 and walking on the waves, and Peter walking on the waves, invites his disciples to take part, to be a part of what he's doing. He invites the disciples to feed the people, and he invites Peter to step out of the boat and walk on the waves. Jesus, in this first story of the feeding, models hospitality, and he calls the disciples to be agents of hospitality. He enlists them to be the hands and feet of his ministry to the people. Just as through the Great Commission, Jesus enlists us as his disciples to go into all the world. We too are invited to be agents of hospitality by stepping out in faith into the world and ministering to those around us. And the thing is that Jesus keeps inviting the disciples to be a part of what's going on. He keeps sharing this opportunity with them even when they doubt their own abilities. There's this tension in us as people who both pass on God's grace and who also doubt ourselves and sometimes slip beneath the waves. Sometimes we fear that we aren't enough, that we're not big enough, that we're not young enough, that we're not rich enough, that there's not enough of us, right? We say, like the disciples, but God, we only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. But Jesus can work with that. And sometimes we give the disciples and Peter a hard time, but they knew who to go to for help. When they were hungry, who did they go to? They went to Jesus. When Peter realized he was sinking in the waves, who did he call out to? He called out to Jesus, right? Lord, save me. You know, no matter how little we have, Jesus can take what we have and make it more. We have a choice about how we approach life and ministry, whether we approach those things with a sense of abundance or a sense of scarcity. The world may look at what we have and see scarcity, but we know that through Christ, our scarcity can be made into great abundance. As we think about this banquet, I am reminded again of something I have felt for a long time, that eating is a spiritual practice. Yeah, I mean, you're a very spiritual person. That's right. You know, I want to think about your experiences with eating. Some of my most potent memories of connection were formed around a table with other people. Growing up, holidays, gathering around a table with family and friends. My mom was one of these people. There was always extra food for supper, and most nights there were extra people at the table, whether it was one of my friends or one of my brother's friends or one of the neighbors or somebody, right? Sitting around that table together. When John and I, after we were, well, ever since we've been married, our table has been one that's been open and often had extra people around it. In fact, we spent 10 months last year remodeling our kitchen and living room so we had room to invite people to sit around the table with us. And we're being intentional this year about inviting those of you from the congregation to come and have dinner with us in our home. If you haven't gotten an invitation yet, you will before the end of the year. We can't have you all at once, so we're doing it in kind of smaller groups, but that's our goal. We want to invite you all to come and sit at the table with us and to fellowship with us. I think that eating together is spiritual for several reasons. One of which is that, feeding people is hard work in some ways, right? There's the cooking and the preparing and the cleaning up afterwards, which the disciples didn't have to cook, but they did clean up afterwards, right? But when you're willing to go to effort for other people, what's that say to them?
That you care about them.
That you care about them, right? That they're worth it, that they matter to you. And so when you invite people for a meal, you're saying, you're worth my time, you're worth my effort, and I want to be with you. Eating also, though, creates an opportunity for connection. One of the things that I heard, Linda has a basket right at your house, and when your family comes to dinner, what are they supposed to do?
Put their telephones.
Put the telephones in the basket, right? So that they're focused not on their little screens, but they're focused on each other. It's when we gather around that table that we can often have conversation, that we can be with each other. Do you know that there's actually what's called the dinner church movement? It's a movement in the church where congregations are having church around dinner tables. Having a meal. Worship includes having a meal together, inviting other people to be a part of that meal, and joining together in that way. The thing about when we gather around a table, the important thing is that we don't have to share big theological truths. We don't have to solve the world's problems, but we are present to one another, right? We can listen to one another. We can hear about one another's lives and one another's stories and one another's faith. And so as we think about gathering around the table, one of the questions that we have to ask is, what is it that people are hungering for? Well, in our world, there are people who are actually hungry for physical food, who don't have enough of it, and need to be invited to a place place where they can be physically fed. But there are also many other people who are hungry in a different way, who are hungry for relationship, who are hungry emotionally and spiritually. Sometimes, though, people don't realize what it is that they're hungry for. Do you know that sometimes when you're thirsty, your body can interpret that as you being hungry? And even though what your body really needs is water, your brain's telling you you want food, right? In the same way, sometimes what we're really hungry for, that connection and that relationship, that sense of belonging, that acceptance can be interpreted as a whole for other things, for things that maybe aren't so nourishing and aren't so healthy. You remember the old country song, "Looking for love in all the wrong places," right? We can look to fill our hungers in all the wrong places. So when we step out like Jesus' disciples to feed people, we need to ask ourselves if what we're offering is what people are hungry for. Is it something that is truly going to nourish not only their bodies, but their spirits and their souls? Will it fill them up? Do we have what they're hungry for? My guess is that people are not hungry for more meetings, more rules, more programs, more responsibilities, right? Sometimes people, when we invite them to church, they think that's sort of things that we're inviting them to. And really what we need to be inviting people to is relationship. Relationship with us, and ultimately relationship with Christ. Gathering around a table provides connection and relationship and inclusion. We live in an age of technological connection, right? But in some ways, that precludes deeper connection with other people. Now, I am not putting down electronic communication because it's very efficient, it's handy, it allows me to keep in touch with my cousins that live all over the country and know what's going on in their lives, and that's all good and well as far as it goes. But if I use it to just superficially connect with the people who are close to me in my life, then I'm missing out on that deeper sense of relationship that can happen when we sit down together. And when I can look into your eyes, and I can have you look into my eyes, and I can hear what you're saying and what's going on in your life. The other thing is that often when we communicate electronically, we feel like we have to put a certain image out there, right? An image, yeah, right? That everything's okay, that we've got it together, that we're all right. Sometimes we aren't real in the way we present ourselves. Technology is supposed to give us more time, but the truth is that we end up just pouring more into the time that we have. I remember one time being really busy and saying to my second mother, the woman who also helped raise me, in addition to my real mother, I just wish there was another day in the week. And she looked at me and she said, no, you don't. You just find more stuff to fill it up with. Right? We need to find time for relationship. We need to find time to be with one another and to be with the people around us. Eating together connects people. Connects. Does that word sound familiar to you? Do we maybe have a mission statement that talks about connecting? Right? Do you know the word companion comes from the Latin com and panis. Com means with, panis means bread. So a companion is someone with whom you eat bread. It's a gathering together. Connecting with other people, eating with other people forces us to slow down as we talked about our mission statement, we also identified kind of like 4 values that we felt like were a focus for us as a congregation. Eating together, actually, I think, speaks to all 4 of those. Hospitality. Yeah, showing hospitality by eating with people. Does that make sense? How about diversity? Inviting people who are different than us to the table, right? Maybe not just inviting the people that we're closest to, but maybe some other people that we might not normally invite to the table, whether they're young or old or black or white or brown or gay or straight or single or married, right? About generosity. Is giving up your time and your food and your effort a generous act? Outreach. Let me ask you a question. What are you more comfortable doing, inviting somebody to church or inviting them to dinner? Are you really?
Oh.
Okay. Because my guess would be most of us would be, I'm surprised. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, that's a good thing. But I would say, my guess would be most of us would say we're more comfortable inviting somebody to dinner, right? Which do you think other people who aren't churched are more comfortable being invited to? Right? Probably dinner. What if you invited people to dinner at your home and invited them to get to know you and became friends with them? Not with an ulterior motive, but just because you want to get to know them and be a part of their life. And then what if at some point you invited them to church or to a dinner at church? A time to come and eat with some of your other friends. Sitting around a table is a time when we can share news with each other, when we can hatch creative ideas, a place where relationships are formed and celebrated, and where commitments to one another are made. What if we replace team meetings with families? Think more people would be willing to serve on a team? You know, the church is called to feed people. Physically feed people, but we are also meant to feed them spiritually. And the truth is that sometimes, like the disciples, we feel like we don't have very many resources to do that. But like the disciples, we have enough. Because we can all bring what we have and share it. God is the one who will provide the increase and the abundance and the miracle. When the disciples come to Jesus and say, send the people away so they can go get something to eat, he doesn't want to break up the party. He doesn't want to break up the group. He calls them to remain together. He said, there's no reason for the people to leave. You give them something to eat. Ephesians tells us that each of us has been given a gift for the building up of the body of Christ. We each have something to bring to the picnic. 2 Corinthians tells us, my grace, meaning God's grace, is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Even when we are weak, God is strong and able to do great things with our weakness. Our job is to stay together and to figure out how to collaborate, how to come together and share what we have with one another and with the world. And then to step back and watch God multiply what we have to offer and make it an abundance. This is not the age of information. This is not the age of information. Forget the news and the radio and the blurred screen. This is the age of loaves and fishes. People are hungry. And one good word is bread for 1,000. We're going to sing Make Me a